is this kind of an orbital model where you have a few core members that are building the community and actively contributing to growing the community. And then on the outer layers of the orbit, there's people who just, like you guys, you just come to participate. Maybe you're just exploring. Maybe you're just coming here one day and you decide it's not for you. That's also fine. This is how we learn and how we engage. So I mentioned that we published a paper. So this is just an excerpt of a poster that we made from that paper, from passive to participatory. So as I said, this is all about how we design these workshops for community engagement. And you can see there in the middle of the page, it shows how this workshop progresses. So first we have the expert talks. So coming up next, we have some speakers. And in that case, it's sort of minimal engagement. It's sort of more one person speaking to many people. And there's maybe some questions and answers, but mostly it's minimal engagement. Then we have panel discussion. And there now there's more engagement. We normally like to take questions from the audience and not just, ask questions to the panelists and you must just sit and listen. We like to make it interactive and engaging. Then what will happen today is a design dash, which is now where you form groups and you're actually doing an engaging activity in your groups. Sorry, everyone coming in. Could you please just... Thank you. The design dash is now like a full engagement. Well, let's just wait for the colleagues to come in and sit down and settle down. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Karibu, welcome. Wamkela Kile. Okay, so for the people who just walked in, I'm just explaining what we're doing today. So we're going to have talks by experts. Then we're going to have a panel discussion, which is encouraged to be more interactive, to get some discussion going. And then we're having a design dash, which is a group activity where you do kind of brainstorming. We have worksheets to help that process along. And by the end of the design dash, we ask each group to come up and present what their ideas were. So sort of the full journey of this workshop, you go from just being a participant to actually participating and contributing yourself by the end. Normally, sometimes we have longer workshops that span 8 hours or so, and then we have something called an ideathon, which is similar to if you've ever watched that program called Shark Tank, where you have to pitch your idea. There's some investors, and the best ideas they get money, or the investors choose to invest in those ideas. So it's a kind of a similar thing. And you'll see the design dash, the way it's organized is that it's kind of a natural step to go from just ideas into more concrete ideas and that kind of thing. And then finally, we're not doing it today, but unconference is again where you let the audience decide what the agenda is. I'm just going to quickly explain the ideathon, which we had earlier this year. So the format, like I said, basically the only thing you have to do is present a few slides describing your ideas. We do give templates and advice on how that happens, on how to structure those presentations. And this time around, we partnered with Google. And so an additional requirement for the ideathon was that you needed to use one of Google's MetaGemma models. And then the prizes at the end, there was prize money for the top 3 prizes, the top 3 teams, Google Cloud Platform credits, and mentorship going forward. And then just to explain some of the models that Google had made available from the MetaGemma. So they've got the normal MetaGemma, which is it's basically like a ChatGPT, where it's multimodal. You can give it images, text, PDFs, whatever. But the difference is that it's trained specifically on medical data and medical images, medical text. And then there's Siglip, which is similar, but specifically only for images. And there was a third one, I don't think it's on here, but basically like a speech model, also trained specifically for medical applications. And there were some amazing ideas that were proposed. There was one team in Ethiopia who was talking about they want to make a model to help uh, the deaf community at their university. There's a big problem with gender-based violence in Ethiopia as well. And sometimes when women who are deaf, they have to go to the clinic and explain what happened, and thereafter also get counseling. They struggle because of that language gap with the sign language. That was just an example of one of the problems that were proposed. There were several other problems in applications on cervical cancer and ophthalmology. I was really blown away by all the ideas that were proposed by the community. And again, it was mostly people who had just met on the day, like you guys are all here today. We'll meet people for the first time. So unfortunately, we're not doing an ideathon today because it takes quite a lot of time and you need a lot of resources to organize it. But we will be doing a design dash today, and that'll at least give you an idea of where we would progress to with the ideathon. So finally, just to close off, special thanks to the organizing team from DSI Africa, Francis from CSR, Kenilwe, Stimbiso, and Mahlatsi. And again, thanks to the Science Forum organizers for giving us this platform and allowing us to host our workshop here. Also thanks to the DSFSI Professor Vukosi Marivate's group at University of Pretoria. We organized some online seminars in the build up to this workshop with him. And also thanks to the team at Cassini, the platform that we're hosting the seminar from. It's designed in a way, Cassini, it's basically a YouTube for research seminars. And when you host a seminar on Cassini, they mint a DOI, which means that you can actually cite the talks that are being given today. You can actually cite them if you're writing a research paper or something. So I think that's very impressive and very cool. And thank you. That's the end of my talk. And we'll move on to the next part of the program. It will be, are you going to introduce the speaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you,
Well,
Lane.
we're doing the.
Well, we have 2 minutes before our first speaker. So I'll take the chance for us to do a Mentimeter poll. Just give me a second. Okay, so I would need all of you to complete this Mentimeter poll for us. You go to menti.com. Go to menti.com on your phone. Menti.com. Once you are there, you will be required to put in a code. So you use the code 89831279. Eight nine eight three 1279. And then our first question is, which area do you believe holds greatest potential for data science and genomics to drive transformative change in global health over the next decade? which area do you believe holds greatest potential for data science and genomics to drive transformative change in global health over the next decade? For those online, you go to menti.com and then you use the code 89831279. Okay, so please provide your responses. The poll will be left open until we end our workshop. Okay, so while you do that, allow me to now quickly introduce our first speaker for our workshop today. Our first speaker is Dr. Geraldine Naidu. He is a principal researcher within the CSIR Future Production Chemicals Cluster. He is an honorary lecturer at the University of Cape Town, Faculty of Health Sciences, and an extraordinary lecturer at the University of Pretoria, Faculty of Natural and Agricultural Sciences. Dr. Geraldine obtained his PhD from the University of Cape Town with a specialization in cell and molecular biology. His current research focuses on functional precision medicine at the intersection of translational clinical research. He leads the CSIR microbiome mapping initiatives and co-leads the CSIR African Clinical Multiome Atlas platform. The platform that he leads seeks to create a Pan-African integrated clinical multiome, which comprises of the genome, the transcriptome, the microbiome, and proteome, the data repository to democratize local precision medicine efforts, foster sustainability R&D efforts, and catalyze African health innovation. Shall we give it up for him as he comes to the stage? Yes. Let me allow our Zoom audience to see. Great. Over to you.
Oh, great.
Can I use that clicker?
Oh, do I use this one or this one?
Anyone will do. So left.
Okay, brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Guessing everyone can hear me. How are you doing today? Good, great. Thank you so much for the organizers for inviting me to be here today. Quick disclaimer before I get started. I'm not an expert in AI or bioinformatics or computational biology. I'm a very humble cell biologist who co-leads a platform that's hoping to generate some data that can then feed into AI and to have impact through AI. Okay, and that platform is called the African Clinical Multiome Atlas Platform, or ClinMap for short. And so my talk today is really gonna, I guess, kind of cover a little bit of what we're doing with ClinMap, what we hope to do, and also try and highlight a few intersections between AI and health, and where AI is really able to kind of drive impact in the health sector. So to start off explaining ClinMap, I always like to start with a story, and every good story starts with the same line. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but actually more like this morning in Johannesburg is where our story begins, right? So let me set the scene a little bit. Our story centers around two guys, Bob and Dave. There's some very important information that you need to know about Bob and Dave. So Bob and Dave are neighbors. They both live next to each other up there, red and green dots on the map. Bob and Dave are colleagues. They work at the same place. They're researchers. Bob and Dave both have kids in grade 1. Their kids go to the same school down there, right? So on this particular morning, some important things are happening. Bob and Dave both have a really important meeting at work with the funders, so they've got to be at work 8 a.m. sharp, right, on time. The kids both have a very important spelling test this morning as well, so they've got to be at school on time. But another important bit of information is that last night there was a crazy storm. Anybody who lives in Johannesburg or any big city will tell you, after a crazy storm, the roads are a little bit of chaos in the mornings, right? So that's kind of the scene for our story. And we'll start off with the story of Bob. So Bob is kind of the old school guy. Bob is set in his routine, and Bob's routine every morning starts like this. He'll get up, he has his coffee, and then he goes around the house going, "Come on, we're gonna be late. Everybody get in the car." I can kind of relate to Bob. I do that sometimes too. So on this particular morning, Bob gets in his car with his kid, hits the road, same road he takes every day to get to school, right? What could go wrong? Except, the storm happened last night. So Bob is kind of stuck. He gets onto the roads and it's chaos. He panics. He takes the first detour that he sees, right? So did everybody else. So Bob is stuck in crazy traffic at the moment. He also just figured out he needed to fill fuel the night before. He's on a new road. He doesn't know where the nearest petrol station is. Kind of figures out his way out, finds something, fills up some fuel, eventually gets to school. But unfortunately, Bob didn't pick the optimal route, so he gets there late, right? Kid misses the spelling test. Oof. Bob is late for his meeting at work. Bob's boss is not happy with him. Bob's wife is not happy with him. Bob is having a bad day, right? So that's the story of Bob. Then we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about Dave. So Dave also has a morning routine. His morning routine, though, is a little bit different. Every morning, Dave gets up, he sips his macchiato, and he checks Google Maps before he leaves the house, right? So on this particular morning, this is what Dave saw. He was able to figure out that the roads were a mess. The usual route that he took every day wasn't the best route to take. Dave also needed to fill fuel, but he could pop that into Google Maps. It's still able to find the optimal route for him to fill up fuel, get to school, drop off the kid, and then still get to work. So Dave gets to school on time. Kid aces the spelling test. Dave also gets to work on time, makes the meeting, and he looks like a rock star because Bob never showed up, right? So happy wife, happy life. Dave is killing it today, right? And so when we think about the moral of the story of why was Dave able to be more successful than Bob on this morning, it comes back to a very kind of simple principle, right? Dave was more successful because he had access to more layers of information, which allowed him to make a more efficient decision in terms of getting to work better, right? So all of those different layers of data that sit inside Google Maps, like your position, the traffic, road closures, where points of interest are, all of that was able to create this kind of real world simulation of what was going on outside. So that allowed Dave to make the best decision to get to where he needed to be. So when we think about health and how we want to navigate healthcare as a continent, taking that example further, the comparison of multiomics is really like Google Maps in terms of the amount of information and the layers of data that we have. So traditionally, precision medicine and the like is focused very much on genomics, right? But what multiomics seeks to do is to combine different layers of information. So genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics, microbiomics, epigenomics, to essentially kind of create layers that mimic the information that you'd see in something like Google Maps. And so the take-home message is that when we think about genomics alone, and we're fixated with genomics as a continent, genomics is like kind of having the blueprint. It's essential, right? It tells us which roads are there, but it's static. Having all of the other layers of information, all the other ohms, is kind of like having all the other extra information that gives you Google Maps, right? So more information means better decisions in terms of healthcare. So when we think about improved healthcare and navigation and how we would go about how do we build the Google Maps of African health, right? When we think about life, we're born, life is, as they say, a journey. And what is the end point? We want to live a long, happy, healthy life, right? But sometimes these things don't always go according to plan. We have detours, and detours can be like disease, right? It's this part that takes us off where we want to go in life. So in terms of cancer, it's very easy to think of this detour in terms of the progression of tissue from normal to hyperplasia, dysplasia, and towards cancer, right? And so as clinicians, as clinical researchers, what we really want to do is to be able to help patients, help families kind of navigate back to that healthy, happy destination. Oh, sorry. And so I guess the take-home question from here would be, do we want to do that navigation and help people like Dave, or do we want to do it like Bob, right? And the answer is that we want to be able to do this navigation in the way like that Dave did it by having access to more information that allows us to make better decisions in real time. So Having said that, when we think about the future of healthcare and what that looks like, it's got to be a lot of different things, right? So it's got to be inclusive. We know that data-driven aspects of it are really, really important. Global populations are very different, from genetics to our kind of geography, and all of that kind of contributes and impacts health. We also know that digital is really, really a critical aspect in terms of the future of healthcare, and particularly linking up with how we are all different, right? In terms of personalized medicine and making sure that the right patient is matched with the right drug, with the right treatment to ensure favorable clinical outcomes. So I'm not going to do a whole background into AI, but when we're talking about AI here, we're not talking about Skynet or sentient AI. We're talking about algorithms that have been trained with very specific data, and based on the data that it's been trained with, can kind of inform decisions or better decision making. So if we look at the World Economic Forum outlook in terms of AI in healthcare, the basic rationale is that with 4 billion people across the world lacking access to essential healthcare, how can we then use AI, and what role will AI play in the future of being able to kind of democratize healthcare for everyone? And so there are a couple of areas that we can highlight, and I think, Lang, you mentioned some of these earlier in terms of what you guys had done with the program with Google. AI can be used to improve image-based decision making and accuracy, example, spotting bone fractures earlier. It can be used for the detection of diseases or early detection based on genetic or molecular signatures, which is what I'll speak about a little bit. It can be used in terms of creating chatbots that are designed by doctors and fed information so that you can actually engage with clinicians and patients. So somebody sitting out in maybe a more rural area where they have access to cell phone signal can actually interact with a chatbot that can provide access to basic levels of guidance and information. Another big area for expansion is AI in traditional medicine, which is something that is very relevant in South Africa. I think India at the moment is actually leading this in terms of integrating clinical multi-omic data sets, AI with their health infrastructure to be able to look at traditional remedies and recipes and how these could be applied to different diseases. And the last thing I'll speak about is maybe the optimization of hospital processes. So how hospitals decide which drugs to procure. And this comes back to being able to save money for the state, but also things like PGX. And a good example is the PREPARE study in the UK, whereby looking at individuals' genetics and then linking this up to pharmacies at the point of dispensation, a pharmacist can prescribe to a patient the type of drug that's actually best suited to have a favorable outcome for them. In terms of investment in AI in the health sector, we can also see over time that this is a reflection of private investment. So not your big tech companies, not publicly listed companies. This is your venture capital and private investment, that there's a lot of money that's been invested into AI, specifically in healthcare, over the last few years. So there's a really great review here if anyone's interested in terms of the future and the outlook of AI in healthcare. But what I would like to focus on today is looking at, for example, how AI can be used to automate, repetitive tasks in terms of imaging and highlighting some examples around that, as well as the utility for AI in terms of multimodal data and the development of biomarkers, etc. So Lang had a couple of these up earlier. And again, there's QR codes which you can easily scan to kind of have or access more information about these. But two amazing applications of AI that I want to highlight is the ability for AI, and this is in practice at the moment, for AI to be able to aid surgeons and gastroenterologists to actively conduct endoscopy. So let's see if I can do this. Yeah, okay, cool. So you can see these little bulges up here. Those are basically polyps inside someone's colon. And polyps are kind of a precursor that can result in, for example, colonic cancer. So when you go into the doctor and they do a scope, part of what the doctor will be looking for are these kinds of polyp or cysts. And part of what the doctor or surgeon will do is want to remove these, right? And so now in real time, there are AI-guided systems, which as the scope is moving through, will flag polyps for the doctor to be able to assist in this type of surgery and also improve the accuracy and efficiency with which the doctor can kind of complete these tasks. Another really important application is the application of AI to assist pathologists. So, for example, when you go in and you're diagnosed with cancer and they remove a biopsy, that biopsy tissue sample has to be looked at by a pathologist to kind of confirm how far the cancer has progressed, what types of cells are invading, and to give a prognosis of the disease, right? Or diagnosis. And so, particularly in the African healthcare sector, in a lot of countries around the continent, we only have a single or a few pathologists that are servicing thousands and thousands of patients, and this is a massive bottleneck. And so when we look at the application of AI towards this, what we have is the ability to help a single pathologist screen thousands of samples more efficiently. And you can imagine how that can improve healthcare directly back to patients across the continent. So again, QR code is available if anyone's interested. The other kind of AI guided diagnosis example that I'd like to highlight is Optiscan. And this is something that's really amazing. So Optiscan have essentially created an AI eye detection tool whereby you can use this little device that they've made here. It takes a photo of your eye. It then uses a patented AI kind of biomarker profile in the background to be able to accurately predict, I think with 95% accuracy, 5 different types or risk for 5 different types of cancers. So now you can imagine the application for this on the African continent, for example, and this is what they've actually been doing now, is going into rural areas where people, for example, may not be feeling well and would say, is it really worth it for me to travel tens or hundreds of kilometers to a hospital or a clinic to be able to figure out what's going on? And so what they can do with the mobile clinics equipped with Optiscan now is to go into rural areas, actually scan individuals and recommend people that should be going in for clinical checkups. So again, a great application of how AI is directly impacting clinical care. In terms of cancer, I'll also just quickly highlight a couple of these tools, which are currently available in the US for biomarker detection and the diagnosis of cancer treatment. So be able to identify which treatments are best suited to specific patients, right? And a great example of here is, for example, Tempus, which uses a multiome approach, so combining DNA, RNA, and protein signatures to be able to identify what is the best treatment approach for patients. Now, interestingly, some of these systems like Oncotype DX are available in Africa if you have access to medical aid, right? The other important question that we have to ask when we look at some of these systems, and what we have to recognize, is that they've been developed and trained using data sets that do not necessarily reflect the genomic diversity or the clinical diversity of the African continent. And so when we start thinking about the future of AI, the future of clinical research on the continent, we have to think about how we as a continent kind of transition from being consumers of technology to actually being innovators and creators of technologies that are actually best suited to us and to our people. And so it seems like a daunting task, but ClinMap has a kind of guiding principle, and it's an African proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that's really kind of the mindset that we need to adopt in looking at the future of AI and the future of AI in healthcare in particular. We have this intersection of so many diverse fields that it can no longer be just clinicians or bioinformaticians or computational biologists doing this alone. We have to kind of come together to achieve these goals. So how do we start with building the Google Maps of African healthcare? We start with some of the technology layers. I've mentioned that in our platform, we work on proteomics, genomics, and transcriptomics. So in terms of the proteomics group is led by my platform CoPI, Yuresh and Govender at the CSIR. And essentially through this platform, what we're able to do is profile different proteomes. And a great example of the application of this type of work is in a study that looked at individuals who are undergoing first-line treatment of tenofovir for antiretroviral treatment for HIV. And around 10% of people in South Africa who go on this treatment actually develop acute kidney injury, right? The problem with this as well is that we can only pick up, using traditional methods, this kidney injury around 36 weeks into the treatment process. And by then it's already too late, and they're able to measure this using elevated serum creatine levels. And so during the study, what we were able to do was to look at within the urine proteome, so within urine, which proteins are differentially expressed. And then by applying a very basic machine learning algorithm and looking at patients who developed kidney injury versus those that didn't, we were able to develop kind of a prognostic or diagnostic signature to be able to predict which patients were more at risk of developing kidney injury. And this is now being developed into a point of care diagnostic for implementation in the clinic to help clinicians. And again, something that was fueled and created by basic integration with AI. A couple of the other layers that I'd like to mention, which I'm not going to go into too much of detail because I think I'm also have too many slides for time, would be microbiomics. So microbiomics is essentially looking at all of the bacteria that co-inhabit your body, and they play a massive role in terms of determining health outcomes from whether and how different drugs are metabolized and how we respond to different treatments. So really, really important aspect in terms of human biology and microbiomics. We did this in partnership with the Sydney Brenner Institute at WITS, Scott Hazelhurst, and my soon-to-be PhD student in December, who's graduating, Claudine and Kara Gutabara. We then come to transcriptomics, and this is my favorite layer of information, which is looking at gene expression, right? So if we go back to our analogy, transcriptomics is like the real life traffic. So it's like which genes are switched on and which genes are switched off. And in terms of a disease state, this is really, really valuable because it gives you an insight on what's going on in the system. I'm going to take a slight detour here because we got into transcriptomics primarily because of the cell models that we were creating, and we wanted to use transcriptomics and certain types of profiling to be able to characterize them. And one of the models that we're making in the lab at the moment is 3D brain cortical organoids. And apart from looking really cool, a really nice intersection to this is when we think about AI and one of the requirements for AI uses a lot of energy and it also uses a lot of water. And so there's a lot of concern going forward about in terms of the environment and how we can balance the usage of AI with environmental concerns. And so there's currently a big shift to something called organoid intelligence, where we have the intersection between cellular models and engineering interfaces, with the idea being that you can use a 3D brain to almost replace a GPU and CPU chip. So these do not consume massive amounts of electricity. They're fed like normal cells in culture. And if you're really interested, this QR code up here links to a company called Cortical Labs in Australia, who are actually pioneering some of this groundbreaking work. So really exciting stuff at the intersection of AI and biology. I'm going to skip through some of this, but it's basically the idea that we also employ a method called single-cell RNA sequencing. So if you think of live traffic, single cell is basically like live traffic, but with Google Street View. So you can zoom into individual cells and see what's going on. So in terms of cancer, this is really, really powerful because if you think about the heterogeneity within the cancer tumor microenvironment, for example, we can then use these types of methods to be able to deconvolve what's going on in specific types like the immune cells versus endothelial cells or other cell types that are contributing to the development of the cancer. Okay. So how do we build the Google Maps of African health? Again, data layers are really important, but it's only half of the story. We need to have the data, but then we also need to have it in a centralized place. And that's really where our platform, or the African Clinical Multiome Atlas platform, comes in. ClinMap functions as kind of a centralizing force. So we interact directly with clinical sites across Africa at the moment. We collect biological samples, and using the technologies that are present at TSR from transcriptomics, single-cell methods, genomics, both host and microbiome, as well as clinical proteomics, we generate multi-layered data sets at individual patient level and across different diseases. So, great, I'm going to have to speed up. So all of this data is then integrated into a single data repository, and the idea is for us to be able to leverage AI. And we've partnered with an AI analytics platform in the US to be able to help us with this multiome integration and kind of data mining processes. With the idea being at the end of the day, we want to create this kind of African relevant national data resource that can kind of fuel AI-related health discoveries in the future. So in terms of ClinMap, this is what our network looks like at the moment. We're also very young. We just started the platform 10, 11 months ago. So we've really just been network building at the moment. Our first data sets are coming in January next year. But we've seen massive growth in terms of uptake of the concept across the continent. And that's been very exciting. Where does all of this data go? So I just wanted to end on something that's, again, linked to AI, but kind of something in the future. So Nature released a few months ago a kind of a commentary on what are going to be the next groundbreaking, life-changing things within the biology and health space. And one of these is the virtual cell, right? So it's this idea of being able to create integrated data sets that represent and can predict exactly how different cells will respond in the human body, right? And there are many labs that are pioneering this. And for any data scientists in the room, if you're really interested in this type of work, a really amazing resource is the Arc Biosystems virtual cell model. So you can access this here. It's all publicly available. And if anybody is looking for data or cells to work with, you can come contact us and we'd be happy to work with you. But the future, I guess, is in terms of African healthcare is looking really bright. So I'm not going to go through the quotes, but if you look at every kind of big every kind of big tech company from Google to Apple to Microsoft, every one of them has an AI strategy that centers around health. So we know this is going to be an area that's going to be really important for the future. And when we think about that future, we also have to realize in terms of innovation and global innovation, as a continent, we're still very much a consumer of products and technologies that are developed in the US and in Europe. And as we look towards making that transition to being a creator of our own content, we have to also look at, and there's been a lot of talk around the map, but when I look at the map and the true representation of Africa, what I see is our potential in terms of genetic diversity, our potential in terms of having the youngest working population group in the next 10 to 15 years. So that is, yes, AI will change the African health landscape, and we just need to be ready. I think with that, I'm going to end our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jolene.
Big question.
Okay, so because of time, I know some of you have questions. Let me see by raise of hand if you have a question. Let me see by raise of hand if you have a question.
Okay, say the full panel.
Okay, so please note down your question. So during the panel discussion, you can ask your question. Okay, so we'll move on to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Professor Nicola Muda. She heads the Computational Biology Division at the University of Cape Town. He leads the Atria-Africa Bioinformatics Network, a Pan-African bioinformatics network across 17 countries. So the Atria BioNet develops bioinformatics capacity to enable genomic data analysis in Africa. She also leads the Harnessing Data Science for Health in Africa Open Data Science platform. She previously worked at the European Bioinformatics Institute in Cambridge as a team leader. At the UCT, her research focuses on genetic determinants of susceptibility to disease, African genome variation, and then microbial genomics and infectious diseases. Her group provides bioinformatics services and develops new algorithms for the analysis of complex African genetic data. She is actively involved in bioinformatics capacity development globally and sits on a number of international scientific advisory boards. Okay, so can we give up for Nikki while she comes? Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. So I'm going to be talking about open data science platforms for data science and AI research. So if you think about most biological experiments, so you've just had a great talk about various aspects of omics data. And any omics experiment actually has a number of different components to it. So you've got to get samples from somewhere. You've got to collect metadata around the samples, like where was the sample collected from, what is the sample, etc. Then you've got to generate data from that. That might be the DNA sequence, the transcriptome, the proteome. But then you've got to go through the rest, which is now, what does that data mean in terms of why you collected the sample in the first place? Where do you store the data? How do you move the data? How do you analyze and interpret the data? How do you share that data later to make it as valuable to the rest of the world as possible? So there are a number of things that you need to have in place that a lot of people just don't even realize. And that is the main kind of the data infrastructure, from data transfer, data standards, data storage, data security, analysis tools, workflows, etc. And then that all comes with the skills required to use all that infrastructure. So you need IT people to be able to develop the workflows, to create that infrastructure for you. But as data analysts, you really start to need more AI and data science kind of techniques and skills to really be able to dive into that data and say, what does this data mean? And how can I use it effectively? So that's a traditional experiment. These days, we're not just looking at a traditional experiment. We don't just generate DNA, genomic data. We don't just generate transcriptomics data. We think about how is this impacted by climate? Do we have images related to that particular patient or that sample? There's a whole lot of extra data, and those are the layers I think that you heard about before, where we can actually look at a much bigger context of your experiment or your sample. So the data are becoming far more complex. So we have large-scale data all of a sudden. It's not something you can necessarily store on your laptop. We have to think about how the governance works, who can access the data, who's allowed to see the data. Is it private? Is it secure? If it's from a human, did they say somebody else could look at that data? It's very heterogeneous, so it's very, very different data types. The African data is extremely scarce at the moment, so it's really valuable to be able to share that if you can. We need tools, the right tools to analyze the data, because our African data are different and more complex, especially in genetics. And then really having the human resources to be able to analyze and share this data. So we need these infrastructures and platforms for data transfer, processing, curation, and then implementing data governance. So when you think about how we can deal with this in an African setting, so if you're in the US, you just, I'll just use Amazon Cloud Web Services because I've got a credit card and I'll just put my data there and that's fine. When we look at the African researchers, many of them don't have credit cards. They can just get a cloud billing account. They don't know how to even move the data. The internet is slow. So we need something that's flexible and adaptable to the African context. So I'm going to kind of take you through an open data science platform using our one as an example to show you what kind of things you can implement in such a platform. And the idea of this is it facilitates findability analysis and reproducibility of science. So this is all from the Harnessing Data Science for Health Discovery and Innovation in Africa, the DSI Africa Consortium. That's the poster over there, and that's the co-host of this meeting. And this is a consortium that was funded by the National Institutes of Health to see how we can use existing data sets, integrate complex different data sets, and actually generate health benefits. So can you integrate climate data, health data, wearable data, image data to get a real tangible health benefit using data science technologies? These projects that are funded in there are extremely diverse. So they're looking at anything from maternal and child health to surgery, images and surgery. There's a huge range of different projects, and the data types are extremely diverse. So we're used to dealing with genomics data or transcriptomics data. Now you've got mobility data, climate data, all sorts of other kinds of data types, which we're not used to using and don't necessarily have the standards for. So when you want to bring all of these data sets together, what you really need is for these data sets to be sitting somewhere, and that could be on a cloud environment or your own laptop. You want those data sets to be registered. So somebody needs to know that you've got your data set sitting on your computer or that it's sitting in a certain place. So that's sort of like a registry. You need a set of tools, and then you need to have somewhere for the people to say, okay, let's find those data sets and then go analyze them. So your user would want to be able to search some sort of catalog to say, what data sets are there? Are those data sets relevant? If yes, can I fetch the data? Can I fetch the tool that I want to run on that data? And then can I run my tool somewhere in a computing environment? So all of these things, to put them together, require a lot of kind of standards and tools. There are a number of international organizations, so the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, for example, they generate a lot of standards and tools to be able to do responsible sharing of human data across the continent. So if you think about it, you've got a rare disease patient in America, you've got a rare disease patient in Africa. It could be that they have the same symptoms, but you never know because you don't have a way to find that rare disease patient that's sitting in the US. So these standards are designed so that clinicians can come in and find these patients and share the data responsibly. So the Alwasi Open Data Science Platform, which is the platform for this DSI consortium, is basically designed to be able to store, find, access data, find tools, run analyses, and then share the results. So in terms of finding data, so we found that when we worked with these different projects that most of them don't have a billing account for a cloud provider. So they're not going to put all their data on Amazon Web Services. They want to put them somewhere local. So we've got a local site at UCT that they can put some data in. But the problem is, how do you find data? So if you think about all the data that's sitting on your computer, if somebody came into your computer now and you said, I've got a data set on a virtual cell somewhere in my computer, do you think they'd be able to find it? Have you described it properly? Is there a way that that it's indexed somewhere? So we have a lot of valuable data somewhere, but people don't know about it. It's not described. People, even when a PhD student leaves, it's hardly ever the case that somebody else can come in and take over, because the PhD students named it something. They don't understand what's in what column. So this is all about making data fair, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So what it means to make data fair, and this is an international movement, and it's now a requirement for most funders. You have at the bottom level your single-use data. So you use your data, nobody else uses it again, and it goes into an archive, and that's it. Bit of a waste of the time and effort to create that data set. The second step is somebody can identify that. The third step is they can identify it, and because it's described, they can actually use it. The third step is that the next step up is that it's standardized. So not only can they use it, but it's actually standardized. So if you've got another data set from somewhere else that was also standardized, you could combine them and use them, et cetera, et cetera. So it's getting kind of more usability of the data. So what we've done in Alwaz is we've tried to get all of these different projects that have multiple different data types and say, how can we boil them down to a simple set of metadata that describes what is in the data set? So our metadata catalog is basically for you to harmonize that data to say, okay, if I'm looking at height, but I measure height in centimeters and you measure height in inches, how do we say that, what is the same thing? So we harmonize between different data sets, and then we upload that to a catalog, and then people can actually search that catalog. And we use large language models to be able to map that data to be able to harmonize across data sets. So you map to a common data model, basically. So this tool allows you to input all your data. It runs this large language model, and then it outputs a nice, this is all done through a web interface. So you can then say, well, this is what I meant. So instead of having your file completely undescribed, now this tool is saying this row in your file means this. It's got HIV status, or it's got height, and this is how I've described height. So it's a way of really diving into the data and saying, if somebody else saw this data set, could they understand it? And then you can upload that to the catalog. So in our catalog, you can actually go and search data sets. So we've got different types from all over the continent. So you can see what country it comes from. Is it image data, geographical, demographic, omics data, etc.? And then you can actually go and fetch that data or find out how you can access that data. So we've got all sorts of different clinical variables in the data set, different diseases, different demographics, and other kinds of health data. So once you've been able to find the data set, now you want to access it. Now, there's a lot of different requirements, especially with human data. You can't just make human data available. It's somebody's personal information. So you have to actually go and find out how you can get access to that data set. And then there are ways to, once you've been authorized to access that data set, to technically go and actually fetch it. Once you've got the data, you want to run tools. Not everybody can run command line. You want a nice interface where you can say, here's my data. Can I run this data science tool to get this output? And so we try to create a nice interface for you. And these tools are all then available. You can fetch them to run it on your own machine or on any kind of cloud environment. And then you want to be able to share the results, again, via a nice interface where you can say to your PhD supervisor, look, I took this data set, and this one. I ran this tool, and these are my results. And everybody can see that, and you can share that collaboratively. But what if the data sets are sitting in different places? And this is now the reality. So when so we know in South Africa we've got the POPIA, Protection of Personal Information Act. In all across the continent, you've now got new data protection laws coming in. These laws are starting to restrict the movement of data across borders. So if you're collaborating with somebody in Malawi and Kenya, you can't necessarily move their data to you to be able to do the analysis. So you now have to send your analysis to the data. So what we're ending up having to do is what we call federated data analysis or data visiting. So you visit the data. You don't take a copy of the data and put it on your machine. You go have a look at it, run a little tool, and only take your results back. And this is a way to safeguard the movement of data, especially health data, which particularly in electronic health records can't move. So what we've done with our platform is we've actually tried to implement this where you can have a data set sitting. We tried with Mali, Uganda, and South Africa, have a data set sitting in these different places and send a tool, the same analysis to each of those, bring them back to a single place and analyze the data. And so we're doing this so that you can kind of choose where you put the data. So it can be in your own computing environment, or one of the data sets can be sitting on Amazon Web Services, one on Google Cloud Platform, and one on Microsoft Azure. But you can then run analysis depending on wherever, it doesn't matter where these data sets are sitting. And so we're putting this all together with using something called DNA Stack. So you can come into a web interface, find these data sets, and these data sets, one could be sitting in somebody's computer in Malawi, one could be sitting on AWS, one could be sitting on somebody's computer in Kenya, and you actually run your analysis like this. So kind of what the platform does, and this is what kind of all these AI platforms should be able to do, is find data, so store the data, find the data, for example, through the catalog, find a tool that's sitting in a repository somewhere, run this analysis on the data using that tool on one of the cloud environments or any computing environment of choice, and then share those results again through this web interface. So that's a kind of the idea of an AI-based platform that you can run, and there are all sorts of federated AI techniques now, Flower AI, where you can run AI across data sets. Of course, with AI, you have to be very careful because now your data set is being exposed to a large language model. You need to think about privacy of that data and how you kind of safeguarding that. So I just want to end off with just a couple of slides on a new initiative, which is also starting to look at these kind of platforms. The African Bioinformatics Institute is a brand new institute. It's a kind of hub and spoke model institute that's just been funded about this time last year to actually set up these kinds of platforms, to set up data infrastructure for large scale medical, biodiversity, agricultural research on the continent to enable platforms like this to exist, not just for health, but for all of these other applications. So ABI wants to bring together all this expertise in AI and data science and bioinformatics, and then enable analysis of the data by African scientists so that the data doesn't have to move off the continent. We can analyze our own data. So this will be, as I say, a hub and spoke model. They'll be doing research services and a lot of training so we can start to build those skills in how we can use AI for the analysis of scientific data for the greater good of the communities. So the one thing that this federated platform, what I talked about was a kind of a federated analysis. The new thing now is a federated trusted research environment. So a trusted research environment is when now, say you've got your health data, it can only stay in your own computing environment, but other people can come in and visit it. So if you have those all over the continent, then now you can actually analyze health data from multiple different countries, which would never have been possible before because governments won't let you take the data out. So what the ABI is trying to do is to build the infrastructure for these federated analyses, so basically a big federated platform that allows you to now start working across countries, across institutions, and responsibly analyze data using AI techniques. So that's just a kind of a snapshot of some of the platform work that we've been doing, just to acknowledge some of the people involved and the funding from the NIH and Wellcome Trust and Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. We have time for questions.
Everyone's shy today. That is a question.
Really agree to both the whereby it's from different groups, right? So okay, so what I wanted to ask is that how does the safe, like how is the data become safe when you are like causing the countries, but those people have access to it? How do they visit it but they don't have access to it? I don't understand the part. How do you visit the data? Like do we like work on data from another country without having access to the specific?
So what it means is that you know what's in the data, but you can't see it, but your tool can see it. So if you send a tool that says, take this column, and this column, merge them and filter them and just give me the results. So you're not seeing the data, your tool is seeing the data. But you can do that because you know what is in each column. So you can say, I want to get all participants that are 6 foot tall and have this weight and have diabetes. Your tool can go and find those in the data. And what they do to safeguard this is some of the theories of cluster research environments, they actually check your algorithm first to make sure it's not going to just scrape everything out. And then there's also an airlock sometimes on the way out. So they will see the results and check. They'll manually check and say, it's okay to send that result out because it's just a summary, it's a piece of the data, it's not the whole data set. So they have these, what they call 5 steps. They're the different ways of safeguarding. You can send an algorithm, what's in the algorithm, and what you're taking out.
And then presumably in that case, the developers would get, say, the sample set of presumably in this federated learning model, then the developers would actually get a sample set of what the data would look like, and obviously de-identified all the rest, and that would help them developing in the first place.
Yeah, so there are different ways of doing it. So there's some technologies which you have your data set and then you expose just a summary of that data set. And that summary is now not showing individual level data. So you can't identify a person from that. It's just saying we have 20 people that are 6 foot tall. We have 5 people who have diabetes. So that's summary data. But because, so the standards that I was talking about, the DERS, it's a data registry service. It's a way of indexing what's in the data set. So basically it will say, this is the data set. These are the columns. This might be the range of the columns. So my height is from 1 meter to 1.2 meters. And then I've got this column and this column. So there's the information, and this is where the data set is sitting. So this registry, this indexing of the data gives your algorithm a clue as to what's inside that data set so that you can work out how to make your script run on that data. Yeah.
And so normally when you ask a question, you need to introduce yourself. So just you just introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Tad.
From?
I'm from Savannah, business.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Hi, I'm Christine Blossom from the CSR. I understand the federated approach you've been explaining in terms of inference or checking whether your tool or your algorithm works in detecting maybe a certain biomarker or something for a certain disease and so forth. But I'm wondering, how would it work for training AI models? You at least in my experience, you have your training data, which is now scattered across the globe. And you need that whole data set together and run through different epochs, adjusting your weights and things for the model and so forth. So I'm wondering just how in terms of training that would work, or is it not applicable to that side of?
Yeah, I think where possible, you can train on a single part of the data set and then train separately on the other part of the data set. But I think they have, in some of the federated AI technologies, I think they've figured that out, how the algorithm can pretend that those data sets are sitting in one place. Like if you chunk it on a HPC, technically they're separate data sets that you can pull together. So I think there are ways that they've worked out to make the algorithm think, the model think that it's actually one data set.
Any others?
It's on.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Arno from SAP. So I want two questions. So when you're talking about data, normally we use softwares and mainly computer science averages. So I want to ask mainly when you're talking about saving data, working with data specifically, which softwares are you using? Or yeah, which software are you using? And another one, I just want to ask if it's possible to get hold of the recording. I think I would like to go through to learn more. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it will be possible to share the recording afterwards. So it depends on the data types in terms of which software. So we use mostly open source software. So R scripts, Python scripts. But what we do is we create a workflow from them and containerize them. So basically, you get all the pieces of scripts that are going to run. It's usually multiple scripts. A workflow language then helps you weave those together to say, the output of one becomes the input for the next script. Then you have an output which becomes the input. So it's basically a workflow of a series of scripts. And then to containerize them, you basically, I won't go into the details of containerization, but it's basically putting them into a box that can then go and be deployed in different places. So when I showed you one area where we have a set of workflows, there's an international repository of workflows. So no matter what computing environment you're on, you can go grab that workflow, which is just basically a strung together set of scripts. But that software, we normally don't use proprietary software, except some of the image software is proprietary because the image analysis software. But generally in kind of multi-omics health data, we use R scripts, Python scripts, and then there's some standard workflows for genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics.
Question? Quite an interactive audience today.
They woke up.
And the validity of the data in terms of when you think of different cutoffs or different standards are used, and then how does the tools then distinguish between these different cutoffs or standards in order to build reliability?
Yeah, so this preparation of the data actually takes longer than most people think. So when you've got a single data set, you have your standards, you have the way you've described your data sets. But if you want to merge data sets, then you need to know that the same the column on height is the same in multiple different data sets. So there's a lot in terms of data cleaning and perhaps normalization. If they were taken with different instruments, maybe you have to normalize across them because maybe there's some different things. So there's actually quite a huge step of data wrangling, of data cleaning, curation to get them to the point where you don't have the issue of kind of quality compromising the results. So it's really saying, and they're common data models. So OMOP is now the common data model for health data. The climate change, they've also got a data model where they say this is how you should describe this data element. So because there are all these international standards, it's actually much easier to be able to map to these models and then harmonize across these data sets. But it's a very long process actually to get the data sets, kind of heterogeneous data sets now harmonized to be able to say they're the same thing to run an analysis on them.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any more questions? We seem to have a lot of people from SMU here today, so it's good to see. Welcome everyone. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next part of the program, which is the panel discussion. So I invite Prof. Nikki Jerome and who's the third speaker again? To my please come up and take a seat at the front. And let's give Nikki a round of applause. So there's a wonderful presentation.
Okay, so welcome to our panelists. Francis, do you want to take us through the Mentimeter results so long?
Yeah. So we have one more Mentimeter poll that we would like to do before we begin the panel. So the same approach that we implemented, you go to menti.com. You go to menti.com and then you put in the code 89831279. You go to menti.com and then you use the code 89831279. We have over 50 people online joining this workshop. So those online, please go to menti.com and then use the code as you can see on the screen, 89831279. And our question is, what is the biggest barrier to integrating data science and genomics into public health systems in low and middle income countries?
Maybe we give them a chance to respond.
Okay, so
Okay, thanks. So while everyone's responding, we can see the answers in live stream here. As they all come in, we can see the numbers changing. But so to start off the panel, just remind everyone again, we're at Science Forum South Africa, where we're igniting conversations about science for the 10th year in a row now. And something Jerolyn said earlier is if you want to go far, go alone. No, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, we go together. And we're all together here in this room. And everyone has a voice, and we want to hear your voice. We want to hear what you have to add to the conversation. So again, I just encourage everyone to please, if you have something on your mind, you can add a question to the panel today. So I think where we'll start, we've had two very interesting talks. And last year when I hosted a session here at Science Forum, we asked the audience, what do you think is the most pressing? What's the most important problem that we need to be looking at? And we'd listed all of the different themes for Science Forum last year. There was climate change, health, a few others. The one that was overwhelmingly voted number one was youth unemployment. So maybe in the context of today, we've been talking about AI, we've been talking about these amazing developments. At the same time, when we open up the news, our news feeds, we're told that there's no jobs in South Africa, it's high unemployment, and we're also told that AI is coming to take all of the jobs. So it's not looking good. So let's see if we can change the conversation, and how do we use these emerging technologies to help boost youth unemployment? Does anybody want to start? So sorry to cut you off.
That's a bit of a loaded question, I guess. But I think job creation is really important, and it's something that we need to focus on. And particularly from a health perspective, I think if you look at biotech and the contribution of the biotech industries to job creation and economies in the US and in the EU, for example. So I think it's in the US, the biotech industry contributes around $3 trillion annually to the economy and creates over 2 million jobs. In the EU, it's around 34 billion euros, 34 billion euros, and around 200,000 jobs just focused, those are direct jobs, just focused on the biotech sector. And so I think, I'll link it back to what I maybe mentioned earlier, is as we start to develop resources like when Niki's just alluded to as well, these resources kind of create these sources of innovation. if I'm a biotech entrepreneur sitting in South Africa, I want to create the next cancer diagnostic for our country. Where do I start doing that? How do I get access to data? Who do I speak to? How can I start as an entrepreneur developing companies that can support the economy and then start also contributing towards job creation? And so I think when we look at tools like AI, they really allow for the democratization of this. You don't have to be an expert in cancer biology to be able to now look at creating a cancer diagnostic panel, right? If you have access to data and basic know-how of AI, you can start working around some of these issues. And it's really idea that AI can create possibilities and really democratize access. That's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to add a few things to that. Yesterday I was going through my LinkedIn feed, and there was this article on how the UK has, I think sometime this week or last week, they have now changed international student visas to allow international students who are graduating from the UK to go into the investor sort of track, so they don't have to take the work or skill visa after graduating. And that made me think a lot about what we're doing in Africa in terms of skills development, in terms of curriculum development. I don't know if there's a conversation between our governments and industry and what industry is expecting, or where the world is going and what we need for the future. I think we sort of need to go back before the jobs to see, do we have enough people that are skilled and trained to do the things we would like them to do for the world that we're building tomorrow. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult in the sciences because the positions that you get are very short-term. Funding is short-term. So it's really difficult to find long-term career paths for people, you know, in AI for sciences. I mean, I don't think AI is going to take some jobs, but it's a tool. It's not a replacement. You still need the people to say the tool is making sense and to implement what the tool tells you. It's to make you more efficient, not to replace you, I think. That's what we should be using AI for. But we really need our governments to start investing in, and our institutions to start investing in longer term positions, because otherwise you just get brain drain, we train people and then they leave the continent because they can get a better job somewhere else. So we need to have long-term career prospects here, where these new things like AI for health are actually recognized as real career opportunities. You know, when we have our foreign students come and they try to register, you have to register with something for your critical skills visa. There's nothing to register for because there isn't a recognized body, in terms of a recognized academic career. Data stewardship is not a recognized career in many cases, you know. So we need the governments and institutions to kind of focus on careers. Like, what are these positions? What are these employment opportunities that can keep the talent on the continent?
Okay, thanks for that. So I'm now going to give the audience a bit of exercise to do. So we want to understand who's in the audience today, what your background is. So I'm going to give you three options, right? So either you can put your hand up which one describes you best, and the three options will be: number one, you're an AI developer, you build models, like you are on the cutting edge of things. Number two, you maybe just use some of these AI tools, maybe on a daily or weekly basis. And number three, you're also not so sure about AI, but you're very interested to learn, and that's actually why you came here today. So number one, who's a AI developer? Got one, two, we got some smart people in this room. Wow, sure. Okay, number two, who uses AI fairly often? Okay, most people. And number three, who's just curious, wanting to learn more? Okay, there we go. Thank you for being honest, everyone. So, okay, do we have maybe any questions for the panel from the room? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay, we'll go then. Oh, there we go. We have a question.
One question in terms of the ethical aspects of the data. these data sets are stored somewhere, and then the census reviews of how do we deal with consent? The data is there, the data is now open for use when participants have not been consented. How do you guys deal with such things?
So we can only use data that's been consented for onward sharing and research use. So one of those tools for the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health they developed is the data use ontology. And so it basically describes what somebody's consented to. So we map data sets to that. So if all the participants said you can use it for this kind of research, but you can't use it for that kind of research, then you can actually map, you can have associate that label with the data set. And then when you get authorized to use the data sets, it recognizes whether that matches what you're going to use it for, matches what they consented to. Because it's difficult, all consent forms have different language. So it's really difficult to standardize that. So this ontology basically says, it lays out the kinds of things people consent to in their consent form. If they haven't consented to any onward use, that data set should not be even available to anybody. So that's a one way of sort of tracking what you can, if you have this label associated with the data set, it says this label is only consented for X, Y, and Z. And then everybody should be able to, it's important to have a strong data governance on top of every data set that has some restrictions on it. And a lot of people that kind of use data sets that have been consented of, a few years ago before these data protection laws came in. So the other thing you need to do is start to say, well, okay, if the data set's from Malawi, does the Malawi data protection law allow me to use the data set no matter what the consent was? So it's just adding an extra layer of data governance that's much more complicated than it used to be.
Anything else from the panelists? No, thank you. Not very well answered. Next question. Number 2 to the
Hello everyone. My name is Sean. Quick question. In your own perspective, how do you think health will look? How do you think health will look like in the next decade?
Oh. Yeah, I think that's a very tough question. I guess maybe I'll just touch on what I know that's, what people are currently doing, the efforts that are out there to try and get the momentum going. So I think the main things are the training of the people, the infrastructure, and I guess adoption, regulation, and governance from governments, I guess. And I think currently we have, I think, about 3 or 4 countries in Africa that have come up with specialized regulations and regulatory frameworks for AI. Other countries are sort of, people are using this technology, but we don't have a framework that sort of defines what's the agenda, what is permissible and what is not permissible, and that goes into ethics and stuff like that. And then in terms of driving the technologies, I think there are a lot of efforts that are going on across Africa in health, infrastructure. I know there's a company called Cassava Technologies that's pumping serious money into AI in Africa to cover health, agriculture, and they've partnered with the big companies that provide the actual infrastructure for them to have data farms across the continent. So I think there is a lot of movement. I think what I would like to see is our governments coming on board. I feel like the private sector is sort of pushing this agenda, but our governments are lagging behind, and
Yeah, and I think in 10 years' time, you're going to be having a lot of your health happening on your mobile phone. It's going to be capturing quite a lot of information about you that can do risk predictions. So I think we should be hopefully shifting from treating to preventing, so that if we know what our risk is, we can start to prevent diseases happening rather than wait till it's too late when you've been diagnosed with something. So I hope that that's going to be the future of health, is more about prevention than having to treat.
Hello, my name is Caspar, and I'm from the University of Pretoria. So my question is, what are we doing to sort of like promote people that are trying to get into AI? Because you look at the market, almost everyone is looking for data scientists with experience. Everyone is looking for people who already experienced. So there's not really many people catering for entry-level positions, and those who get trained. I'm not yet done with school, so I'm not really sure how people are doing it out there. But when you look at the market, it's mostly looking for experienced people. So what are we doing for sort of like the people who are just getting started?
So from our side, we have a master's in data science, it's computational health informatics. And so they actually have to do a project. So you get experience by doing something. So when you're at university, you learn theory. If you can demonstrate that you've applied it to something, I think that can help. If you're not doing a master's, find a problem. The citizen science, find a problem to apply that to, because that is experience. Even if it's not in a job situation, it's experience. And you can show your code, you can show your results. It shows initiative that you took the time to try and implement the skills that you learned. It really cements the skills when you implement it on a real life problem. But it's a standard problem with any career. They all want experience, but nobody wants to give you that chance to get experience. So try and do it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Nikki has made. I'm a PhD student, and when I'm thinking about what am I going to do after my PhD and looking at jobs, I think that is the fastest and easiest way to get experience is to actually find small problems for you to solve and, like she said, publish your code, publish your results. Because I feel like the field of data science is a completely different field in the sense that you're not you don't have that formal training where you go for an internship or housemanship. You have to build pipelines, you have to build models, you have to build tangible tools. Maybe the deployment and whatnot is the next level, but you need to show that initiative. And I know in other countries, like in the US right now, a lot of people who've studied data science or studied computer programming are complaining bitterly that there are no jobs because they are ordinary people like you and me who have not studied AI, data science, or machine learning, who have capitalized and leveraged the free sources that are online for you to learn. You can learn how to code on YouTube if you want it. So now I think the world is sort of moving from that formal training of computational biology or data science. I'm not saying that there isn't room for you to get the formal qualification, but I think you need to prove it more than have the piece of paper that can actually do the work.
I think you covered everything. It's just my experience though has been a little bit different in terms of speaking to collaborators in Europe. A lot of them have said they've stopped advertising on their lab websites who their bioinformaticians are, who their data scientists are, because in 2 or 3 weeks, that person gets an email from a bank or an AI company, and they're offering them salaries that are more than the PI is earning in the lab. And the bioinformatician goes back to the PI and says, look, I got a job offer. And he's like, well, that's more than mine. I can't match that. And so we're having those robust kind of the brain drain effects within the data science field. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that I think that a lot of data science is, like you alluded to, it's processes and things that you learn. Whether the data is genomics, whether it's banking data, it's ones and zeros at the end of the day. And if you put in the time to show that you can work with the data, your utility, I think, will kind of shine through.
With the biological data, it's much more interesting.
Exactly.
I think maybe another thing you could look into, so you can actually host your own website, the static website is on GitHub for free. So just leaning into, I think, what the panelists were saying about basically you want to establish your portfolio. This is quite a common thing for the colleagues who are going into design fields and website building and whatever. have a portfolio. So that's maybe something we need to maybe normalize. This is kind of helping everyone to build a portfolio in whatever field they might be working. And these AI tools definitely could help us.
I'd just like to add something to this. I wanted to say, I think for the young people in the room, the people who are my age, I think we need to start thinking about careers as a toolbox. So I mentor people and I'm always telling my mentees that what skills do you have in your toolbox? I think the world is now changing from that formal training that I was talking about, and it's more about your transferable skills. So that's what you need, I feel, that we need to start working more on the skills, like what he's saying, that, you know, they're ones and zeros. So if you build a model using biological, genomic, clinical data, those skills are transferable to banking and agriculture and whatever other field. So it's about what tools do you have, and trying to find the intersections between different fields, because that's what sort of sets you apart. Because like I said, everybody now has a data science degree and a computational biology degree and a computer science degree. So what have you done to differentiate yourself?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. David Mabena from Tshwane University of Technology. I have a two-part question. The first one is, are there any programs for individuals who are at risk of losing their jobs due to AI? So for them to transfer their skills and actually use them for AI. And the second part of the question is, are there initiatives of individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds? Because there are some, when they actually come this side, they realize that computer science is actually something they can excel in. But from where they come from, especially their background, that is something they do not know anything about. So I just wanted to know, do you have those programs and those initiatives that target those individuals?
It was two questions. The first one was the training programs for people who are at risk of losing their jobs, and the second one was
initiatives for disadvantaged backgrounds, like they don't know about these skills.
Okay.
Yeah, and the first one, I think people are only starting to recognize, am I losing my job because of AI? So I don't think there are actually any formal programs that would do that. I mean, I don't know of any, maybe others do. For your second question, so our programs, we always target previously disadvantaged students. So we have a set of bursaries, and those bursaries are targeted for those students. We used to do quite a lot of school outreach as well to say that these things exist. And then my project's been working across Africa, and again, exactly recognize that people who thought that they couldn't do this. It's like during COVID, it was a perfect career to have, because you could just continue your work. It's something that is so accessible to do, because you know, you need a computer, you need some skills. Those kinds of skills that are just good, you can learn on YouTube. Actually, some formal training would be nice as well. But it's a really accessible career. Like you know, the wet lab is fantastic, but it requires money for equipment. It requires money for consumables to generate data. There is so much data out there that's freely available. If you just have the skill that you can teach yourself to be able to analyze that data and interpret that data on your laptop, that's all you need. You know, and then you can actually become one of these high-paid data scientists, not like an academic like us. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for previously disadvantaged groups. Maybe we need to do more outreach to say that this is an option, you know, because it really is an accessible career.
So I think that's one of the things that outreach and partnerships part is part of what DSI Africa does in the working group that I'm a part of in DSI Africa, where we're trying to see how do we reach out to, you know, not only form partnerships between research groups and people who are not part of the consortium, but also reach out to people who are in these communities who are not aware of these sort of opportunities. So I guess you could follow the DSI Africa page or socials.
Is there an exhibition piece?
Okay, so there's an exhibition out there, and maybe you could go and speak to someone there or speak to Francis. And yeah, and hear what we're trying to do. And I also know that there are people who are running initiatives, online sort of things, I'm involved in something that's launching in the first quarter of 2026. It's a platform that's geared towards women, but nothing stops the guys from joining, where we're going to be showcasing leading women in STEM careers in Africa, just as a way for people to, for girls, grassroots, for them to see what is possible. Because I think sometimes you are sort of stuck in your own little life and you're feeling stuck and you're in university or you don't have a job, you've just come out and you're trying to think, what's next? Do I do a master's? Do I not do a master's? Do I even go into this data science thing? Because the older generation, our parents are telling us that we've never heard of this and we're not sure you're going to get a job and it's looking bleak. So this platform will launch on what is it called? YouTube, and we'll have webinars and showcase these different women quarterly, just for you to see what is possible out there with STEM. So beyond the data science, but as we know, you can merge now your data science with pretty much anything. It's up to you how creative can you go?
Right, so I'll just add to that, that Sisonke Biotech, I mentioned earlier, if you came from the slot, that you have something called an ideathon, which we normally host, that's the longer workshops. And as I said, you form groups and then you pitch your idea. The top groups kind of get some prize money and also some mentorship to take that idea forward. And even since this last one that we had in August, there's a couple there's one group, as I said, that I've been working with. They didn't win a prize, but there was another funding opportunity from BRICS platform actually. And we were trying to help them to put together a proposal to send for this funding. And just what I learned from facilitating that experience is just what a big jump it was from our events that we organized to that real world. And so I'm learning. We're going to try and make these things better. And I think really the best way we have to combat this unemployment is we need to learn how to make jobs, not just to get jobs.
Yeah.
So I think that may be something that you can take away. Sorry.
Hello once again. This time I'm asking for advice. I'm building a telemedicine app, but also focusing on prevention. So what advice would you give?
Just repeat the question.
I'm building a telemedicine app, but also focusing on prevention. For example, when I have flu, you have symptoms. So basically, trying to prevent sicknesses before they actually okay.
So I think you need to look at obviously the data that relates to that particular symptom that you're trying to prevent. But you also need to look at individuals because, what exposures have they had? Are they immunocompromised? Maybe it doesn't matter what the temperature is that day, but think about what other data types would influence that decision. And we know that African genetics is the populations are so genetically diverse. So if you really want to go into prevention, you need to understand the genetics because you'll have markers in the genome that are going to predispose you to certain things. So I think the advice would be to look at contextual data as well, not just what is that symptom, but are they taking any drugs that are immunocompromised? Look at the entire context.
Yeah, well, just to add to what you said, I think the context there is really important in ensuring that you build something that's going to be valuable and most actually can translate to impact for the people that will be using it. And I think a good approach would be to look at what already exists in the market, what already exists overseas. So there's a lot of things that are in place around this particular market, I think. And an example I can give you is there's a lupus kind of online tool that exists for Europe, right? And we were trying to put together grants, so we were working with various people, and we looked at this tool. So it's an AI-based interface where you can work like a chat prompt, right? So you can speak to it and ask it a question, and it'll give you a response. And what happened was that we were working on this, and then we tried to take it back and say, okay, does it make sense for people locally? And when we put it back to people locally, they were like, the app doesn't really work for me. The questions aren't based on what I would want to ask. And so think it's really taking that into account is like look at what exists in terms of development pipelines, use that as a framework, but you really have to make it locally relevant.
Yeah, I'd like to add on what both of you have said. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have in Africa is trying to adopt technologies and not building things that are specific to our context, not just in medicine, but in everything. And I think we're in a very unique position, like you were talking about the disadvantaged individuals, people who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, because the whole idea is to solve problems. So there's nobody who understands an African problem or a problem in your local community, in the village or whatever, than you. So you are the right person to build these tools and build something that's context aware and specific to answer that problem, solve that problem.
Sure. I'll just add from my side. So here at the CSR, I'm involved in a lot of development of digital health apps. And I've moved into business analysis now as well. So I don't know, it sounds like your situation, you may be a one-man startup kind of thing. You're trying to build this from scratch. So that's very exciting to hear. But yeah, I can tell you that like you're going to be very good at solving the technological problems. You're also going to face other problems like business problems. You know, what's the funding model? Who's going to pay for this? Who are the target markets? I think like the panelists said, what are the other products in the market? Also, just something that like I think we overlook that I've learned from experience is you know you need to have your testing strategy and kind of your deployment strategy. Like you want to have like a small focus group or something pilot. You get that feedback. That feedback is very valuable, and it'll inform you. And I think there's the saying for entrepreneurs is fail fast, fail often. Always keep keep moving. So nice. Good to hear.
Okay. My name is Luisa Nunu. I'm from the CSIR. I just want to speak on the part of youth and unemployment. I think we as youth, especially, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and then we're escaping the facts here. I like the way you put it. In my university, in honors, I actually worked with neural networks, but it was taken up 4 years back. AI was not as it is right now, but I could understand the basics, and I was like, no, not now. So I was able to divert my attention to something else, but I can see, well, okay, it's exciting, but it's a very, very broad field, When you're getting in there, you need to understand what you are going to do. Because programming only will not work for you. I've also worked with Python, mostly Python, with training the models, training data, all of that. It's exciting, but it's the element of passion behind it. And the other thing is, youth is using AI for different things now, and then the attention is shifting because there's talks now, but it's being used for propaganda and all of that stuff. So someone who has no full knowledge will not even be interested because now it looks like there's a lot of politics involved. And also coming to the initiatives, I think everyone, the panelists, everyone commented has covered. The resources are out there. I wish if someone can come and say there's no resources, show us, please prove it, because it's a very big statement to make, and you can share that with some other people. And it's a very wrong view. Online there is online, it's mostly free resources. I was able to build it from scratch without even my lecture telling what to do. So I wanted to do it. So I think most of us as youth, we lack that, and we mostly use AI for content now because we are shifted, and as Blaine has put it, is that we want things that are already finished. We don't want to start our own things, and we want mind, we want to buy our followers. We are not focusing on the actual basics. How do we build our own things? If you look at it, if the United States decide, well, no more content for you, what are we gonna do? All of those things. So it's even us, we need to take accountability so that we can do better in the future. It's not just there are resources like everything, and I think Fusi has said it, but there's even something free and it's available for everyone on YouTube. So I think even as I don't know anyone among my age mates or my WhatsApp. I've never even seen anyone posting about the interest of AI. I have like more than 50 contacts. So that is I mean, we need to just not give technical terms. Sometimes you need to bring it on the lowest level, the generic. Well, okay, because what I do at home, it affects. If I spend every day not thinking about AI, you know, so I think there has to be a passion behind it. No engineer has done engineering just for fun. You need to put it somewhere. So yeah.
Thank you. So no questions?
No.
I wanted to share your knowledge. Okay. So thank you to Vuyisa, our fourth panelist. Giving us the youth view. And yeah, I think just to summarize what he's saying, it's all about organic growth, you know, and what you put in is what you're going to get out. So even if you are using AI, you know, if you use AI to do your homework, you are not learning, you are hurting yourself in the long run. Okay, so I think we'll just go back to the panelists for just closing remarks, and then we'll convene for lunch. Closing remarks. Oh, right.
Yeah, I guess my closing remark is that the opportunities are huge, but let's use AI responsibly. Let's make sure that we do it ethically, not only in terms of using data ethically, but using computers and the environment and everything else ethically. And yeah, I'm building skills in this area will not only help you for your career, but also in your daily life in the future. You know, for everybody who uses ChatGPT to do something. So it is the future. Let's embrace it, but let's do it sensibly.
Yeah, my parting words are, as the youth, I think we need to stop waiting for somebody to come tell us what to do and give us an opportunity. I think we need to go out there and find the opportunities for ourselves, create the opportunities for ourselves. As we've said, I'm just reiterating what's been said, that everything is open source, it's publicly available. You can download RStudio, or you can use the terminal on your computer to create code. The dummy data sets you can download to trial your models and your code to see your algorithms are working. So the opportunities are there. Let's solve the African problems that we have. Let's stop waiting for somebody to come and solve our problems, and let's solve our own problems. We are the ones who are going to be living in this world 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. And our children are going to ask us, what did you guys do when you had the opportunity to solve some of these problems? So I think let's get involved and let's get them.
That was really good. Very hard. No, I think, yeah, two of the main points that were highlighted today were very much like, how do we think about the future in terms of employment, job creation, and particularly, you know, in the future of where AI is going to be so important. I think you guys both covered those aspects. For me, I'll close with one thing, which is a question I ask a lot, so maybe everybody can ask themselves this question indeed, but how do we measure impact? How should we be measuring impact? And it's particularly relevant for me in clinical research. In the academic setting, because we're traditionally trained to be able to think of how do we measure the value of what we've done, being publication, right? It's that culture of publish or perish. And I always go back to this fundamental question of, go back to your 9-year-old self and ask, why did you get into this field? And it comes back to that, the aspirations around passion again. Is there a 9-year-old who sat there and said, I want to be a scientist because I want to publish in Nature Science? No, you wanted to do this because you wanted to change the world. You wanted to do this because you wanted to help people. And so it's really about, you know, not being, having that being taken away from the system. Stay true to what you believe in, and you know, don't give up on achieving those goals. And think about every day, what is the impact you want to achieve, and go for it.
Thank you. It's a second round of applause for the audience Thank you. So thanks again to the panelists. I think it's very good to have an organic conversation, I would say. Maybe took a different route than we thought it was going to take, but it's good that we had this opportunity to engage. Okay, so we are now going to break for lunch. And then after lunch, we're going to break into groups and we're going to do a design dash. So we had a lot of talk now about unemployment and we need jobs. So we're now going to do kind of a more hands-on brainstorming type of session, problem solving session. And it's going to be you guys that are going to be leading. So please, I invite all of you to please come back. We want to aim for, we said 1:30, but the lines are normally long for lunch. So let's say by 1:45, everybody please come back. And then we'll start with the activity. I have also this time around, I've added 2 topics on the design dash for that relate to the 2 speakers topics. So if you guys are able to stay, then that's great. But if not, that's fine also. And yeah, hope to see all of you back here 1:45 later. And sorry to the people online, we will be closing the session now. We're not going to be facilitating online after lunch. Thank you. Sure. Thanks for yeah. So dodging some curveballs maybe. But
I mean, it's just like the IBM